Thank you very much, Carlton. Appreciate those words. As we move on, I want to give a little bit of a message to you all about what we've been working on at Marshall Economic Development. We have been thinking about workforce. If you've been to any of my meetings the past 2 years, you know this is probably the most workforce-centric board our EDC has ever had. I mean, it is paramount, and we understand it. And I probably got a clicker here, too. Oh, it's not working. So many of you know we changed our logo recently, and it was very intentional. You're probably wondering what the diamond was, or if you read the story, you know what it is. It's about foundations. It's about building foundations that are long-term. It's not about projects. It's about developing programs, relationships, collaborations. It's about investing in our community, both our infrastructure and our human capital, for the long term, foundational. I base that off of the 4 factors of production. So it's nothing too sexy, right? But it's the basics. What do you need to produce a good or service? You need land, physical land, natural resource, labor, that's your human capital. That's good, sorry. You need labor, which is human capital or skilled workforce in our people. Does anyone know the difference in human capital and just a general worker? You got skilled labor, unskilled and skilled. Your human capital is higher on this because you've got a skill, right? We're trying to develop that. What do you do to develop that? Well, you focus on education. I think it's absolutely paramount for our community to be looking at the education of what we are doing from our early childhood development all the way through upskilling folks who may have retired early or maybe coming back out of retirement. The other big issue, big ticket item that I see is capital. So that was one of the 4 factors. That's not money. Capital refers to the machinery, basically the things that you use to produce a good or service, but also includes infrastructure, right? What's the one thing a company usually doesn't do when they move in? They buy their own machinery, right? But they're dependent on you having road, water, sewer, fiber optic now. I mean, you've got to have fiber optic like you got to have water, electricity, natural gas. Those things are absolutely critical. They're also very, very expensive. So what's one of the most effective use of our dollars to create these lasting foundations? Contributing time, treasure, and talent to reestablish a local culture that believes in the investments of education and infrastructure. You notice I said reestablish. Who knows where's the Athens of Texas? Does anyone know the answer to that? Not Athens, Texas. The one they call the Athens of Texas. Marshall. Who knows where they had some of the first mercantile shops in the state of Texas? Definitely East Texas. Had brick paved roads and running water. Marshall, Texas. We kind of let things go a little bit here and there, right? We get complacent. We all do. But we're trying to relaunch. We're trying to do something that's difficult, right? The most difficult on that whole list of the 4 factors of production are education and infrastructure. So that's not right. It's not all fixed. We can't all just go home. This is expensive. It takes time. It takes input. It takes planning. It takes collaboration. It takes retooling. You got to fix this. We can't just say, hey, we got together today. We're all good now. Rochelle was there. She got the notes. Rush was there. Everybody, Carlton even came. That's all fixed. No, we're going to have to do this every year. And we're going to have to do this every year for a number of years. A number of years working together as a community. You know, I say economic development doesn't happen in silos. Absolutely not. If you're looking at me to fix town, I'm going to come right back to you, and I'm going to say, well, come meet me. Come meet me halfway. Let's go see what we can do together. It takes all of us. You have to have a school. You have to have governance. So we've come up with somewhat of a new slogan over at the EDC. Envision, what are we seeing, what are we projecting, what do we want to be, what's practical, what's real but aspiring. Collaborate. Like I said, it's not going to be me, we're working alone. It's not going to be the EDC working in a dark room. It's going to be all of us giving input and following up and dedicating resources, time, talent, and treasure. And we want to build. That's the action step. You can get in that little circle where you're just talking about things and talking about things and talking about things, and you don't actually do. But we've been in the talking phase for a couple of years. We've regrouped. I feel like Marshall, honestly, hit a point of inflection probably around 2016 or so, probably along the lines of that ISD bond. Since then, you've seen some people come together a little bit more. It's drawn us closer. Now it's time for us to capitalize on that, keep it together, and keep that investment going up, right? Am I going to fix it? Am I going to fix it in 40 years? I probably won't be here in 40 years. But I'm changing trajectory. We are changing trajectory, right? We're moving that block just one more step past, one more step better. We're building lasting foundations. So I want you to just look at these pictures. This is a Marshall High School graduation. As you see these kids, what future do you see for them here in 10 years? What do you see them doing? I mean, given everything that you've heard here today, the changes that are happening, sometimes the alignment's not right. I mean, where do we want these kids to be? What do we want them to know? Do we want them to live in Marshall? Do we want them to move to Dallas? What do we see on the infrastructure side? Do we want something like this? Terrell, is that okay? Can we build one? If they pay their taxes, right? But how are we going to organize and how are we going to be smart about it? How are we going to plan? How are we going to bring infrastructure out to those places? Collaborate. This was one of the early meetings of We Align, and I'll get to that in a minute. We actually have a program. I promise I didn't pay y'all to talk about alignment. We also engaged with our local officials, our federal and state officials. That's U.S. Representative Nathaniel Moran, visiting in the Synergy Park building, right? I don't know how many years it sat there with nothing going on. Office space wasn't in high demand in COVID. Looked like about a $4 million project. Scott, I don't know if that's right now, but you don't have to tell me. But they turned it into a thing that brought nonprofit, workforce, private enterprise, and education together in that building. It wouldn't have been feasible for any one company, but all together, we made it work. So building, what's next? Education, obviously one of my favorite topics here. The We Align Workforce Development Fund. We Align, if you don't know, stands for Workforce and Education Alignment. It started as the Workforce and Education Alignment Group. It was composed of people who wanted to see more communication between industries and educators. What skills do you need? The educators were asking, what skills do you teach? I mean, it's as simple as talking to each other. And that's where it started. It started at talking. So that fund that we're talking about is something the EDC has approved, but we're still taking before the city. We are looking to make a substantial contribution towards the We Align Workforce Development Fund each year for the next 10 years. And we have $2.5 million total scheduled for that right now. What we'd like to do, What we'd like to do with that is find private participation for scholarships. You all know that live here that we suffer from generational poverty. We got kids that can't afford $30 for a dual enrollment class. They're wondering what they're going to eat, right? They go home on a Friday, they don't eat again until they get to school on Monday. We got that problem. What are we doing to bring those kids up at the most advantageous time in our lifetime to go from lower class to middle class to maybe even upper class with education? If I can get support for that Promise Fund, and I'm working on it, I've already started a fund. But it's a nonprofit. It's something the EDCs don't generally do with scholarships. But we can work with our primary employers to promote education for those skills in partnership with our post-secondary institutions. My goal over 10 years is to put $5 million into that fund. I think we basically put $500,000 a year over the 10 years. We do things like we address the technology change that Rochelle was discussing. Like, how do they change? They can't do a bond every year. They run them out of town. But how can we address that? How can we make those small retool readjustments? Well, we can use some EDC funding to do that. And we have a board that wants to do it. So on infrastructure, obviously that's a big ticket item, and I know Terrell is looking at that, and that's more of a city function, right? There's some things we can do. We're an EDC, so we can help build, site improvements, new expanding business. So very targeted in our development to help drive more revenue for the city to do those other larger infrastructure projects. We're about a $1.8 million budget a year, so that doesn't build a whole lot of road. Rehabilitation of key business corridors. Anybody see any rusted buildings on a hard corner that's got a stoplight in Marshall, Texas? That's not where that goes. There's people that sell things on those hard corners. They love them. Ensuring infrastructure is addressed, including fiber. Fiber, like I said, is as important as water. If we can't get it to our kids, they will be so far behind, it will be insurmountable. So real quick, and I'm going to give you all these slides, so I'm not going to read it all. But I need help at the EDC. I'm hiring a full-time BRE workforce director. I need somebody to come in, boots on the ground, running. I need somebody to work with the schools, work with our industries, work with our colleges. We're going to form the We Align Council. The We Align Council, as I see it, is making those decisions based on where our funding goes. So I've got 5 people from industry, I've got 5 people from education, and 1 economic developer. They hear petitions from our industry partners, from our schools, about what projects merit the use of those funds. What can we use those funds to maybe even leverage against state dollars? But it's there. It's certain, right? You know that allocation is there, so, Rochelle's not going crazy back there saying, well, Rush told me I could have $250,000 a year. I don't know what the problem is. It's going to be there, right? You just got to apply for it. But it's there to leverage, too, to grow. I mean, we want to build this thing. We want to do it 10 years so that what we're saying is, yes, this is a dependable allocation. Let's move forward. In the 10 years, let's look at it. Let's see what we need to do then. And the Development Promise Fund, that's another one of the items that I discussed. I could use some help on that, by the way. If anybody knows anything about nonprofit scholarship funding, come visit with me. On the infrastructure, we want to identify key corridors. We want to increase our marketing efforts on existing site-ready properties. We got 170 acres that's just about completed of site-ready in our Marshall Business Park. Thank you very much to the city for their faith in us to develop that. We are getting looks. We are getting looks on that. And then we identify projects the EDC can collaborate with the city. The city is our authorizing agent. We serve the city, but we also serve our existing businesses around us. So I'm not going to read all this. Formalizing BRE, that's the Business Retention Expansion Program. Internships and apprenticeships. Y'all, we have 3,000 college students in our city limits every year. We don't have internship programs. How do you get one of those college kids to stay in Marshall? Well, let's see if they like this job. Let's see if we can keep them. Let's make sure we're aligned, right? You want a marketing job? Let's look at the 4. You want a industrial maintenance? Let's look at TSTC. How do we create those partnerships? That discussion is going to happen this year. And talent retention, again, you got a captive audience, 3,000 college students. If your educational attainment is low, which it is, it's 21% here, associate's level or better. Texas is higher, Harrison County's higher. The United States is higher than all of those. But those in this room, you have a critical role. How can we engage? I mean all of us. How do we collaborate? And how can we strive for something greater? Right? We're go for launch, right? This is a big effort to keep this collaboration, to change the culture. Our next slide. This is what I would say we were 10 years ago. That's my piece of pie. I'm the economic developer. Stay out of my business. Am I right? What do you think? This is what I want it to be. And I think where we are headed, where we've developed these interdependent systems. We're there for each other. We're helping each other survive and succeed. Right? You don't do everything economic development, just like I'm not teaching classes to fourth graders. But we have partnerships, and we're talking to each other. For all of y'all to be here for a half day, I'm so happy. I can't believe it. I could get my city council folks. If y'all are here, I'm going to do a quick thank you, if you don't mind. City folks, if you would stand up. I want to thank all our council members, city managers, city staff over here, MPD, Marshall Fire Department. Those are partners. Our county commissioners and employees of the county. If I could get you to stand, please. Thank you so much for being here. You are absolutely a valued partner. We will continue to work with you. Marshall ISD trustees and employees, if I could get you to stand. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for participating. Our Marshall EDC board and employees with our cool crossed arms. If y'all would stand, please. I lean on my board pretty hard. Sorry, I didn't mean to say all that. We'll get new pictures. The Marshall Chamber and Board. I know we had some earlier. There's Stacia, we had some board members. I'm a board member too. Go figure. You think that would have happened 10 years ago? Our college and education leadership. I know we had some here. College, TSDC, Wiley, Panola College Marshall, ETBU, thank you so much for being here. And our business leadership, I know we're represented by a few and some had to leave earlier, but thank you for being here. You're welcome to stand or sit, but thank you so much for being here. This was a good project, by the way. This was a $50 million project. That was a good one. And it was in the county. So when I say that we do things in the county, yes, we do things in the county too. But we see that mutually beneficial relationship, right? It helps us. It's within our labor shed. Workforce Solutions East Texas. If you would stand, if you're from Workforce Solutions Texas. $452 kids, right? Plus some other job seekers, plus 50 employees. You don't think employers are hungry right now for employees? If you want a job, you can get a job. They were there in full force. And that's great that we could be there together as a community, our educators, our regional partners, our EDC, and we even had our local officials come by. You got to show those industries some support. Show them that you care. You care that they're in a community. Next time you find an industry like J.C. Kester's, tell them thank you. Thank you for employing people in Marshall. Thank you for the sales tax and the property tax. Texas Workforce Commission. Commissioner Demerson, thank you so much for being here. I know it's a drive, but I'm flattered you're here, and you're always welcome back. Now, I want to leave you with one last envisioning exercise. Does anyone know where that is? Price T. Young. When? That's 2016. They were doing a little science experiment. Those are, I think, 4th, 5th graders. Or 5th and 6th graders. No, 4th and 5th. That's them yesterday. Not the same kids, but that age group was at that job fair. Where are we going to be 7 years from now? Now, 7 years ago, we started building schools, right? We started getting things in line. We started investing in our human capital, our kids, our people. We started that. Y'all started that, ISD, and the community did as well. Where are we going to be 7 years from now if we make that change, right? We talked about, oh, well, if we keep going linear, it's going to go like this. It's going to be pretty flat, just like the last 70 years. But what if we change it? What if we do something different? What if we actually work together? We make sure that education is our priority. We support our schools. We support our kids. We support that investment. We support workforce development. What does it look like then in 7 more years, in 10 years? Particularly if you can add some funds to it. Sorry. So, when I talked a minute ago about economic development, it doesn't happen in silos. It can't just be the board of directors and me. Now, we do a pretty good job, and we try to connect as much as we possibly can. I think we're a very collaborative group. We want more input. We want more discussion. But in order for all of this to work, it really involves everyone here.